week before my wedding, I found a message on my fiancé's phone that stopped my heart. A message from my best friend, my best man, the man who had been standing beside me for 15 years. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I didn't say a single word. Instead, I put her phone back exactly where I found it, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and made a decision that would change every single person in that wedding hall forever. If you enjoy dramatic stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Francisko's Stories for more. My name is Daniel, and I want to tell you about the worst and the best week of my life, because somehow they were the same week. I had been with Claire for 4 years. 4 years of what I thought was real love. She was smart, funny, and beautiful in a way that made me nervous even after all that time. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. She laughed at something I said that wasn't even that funny, and I thought to myself, I'm going to marry this woman someday. And I was right. I just didn't know then what that day would actually look like. Marcus had been my best friend since we were 19 years old. We met in university in a cramped lecture hall during a statistics class that neither of us understood. He leaned over and whispered, "I have no idea what's happening." And I whispered back, "Neither do I, but I've been nodding like I do." We laughed, and that was it. 15 years of friendship. He was the first person I called when I got a promotion. He was there the night my father was taken to the hospital. And when I decided to propose to Claire, he was the one I told first. He helped me pick the ring. So when I say what I found destroyed me, I need you to understand what was at stake. It wasn't just a cheating fiancé. It was the collapse of 2 of the most important relationships in my life at the exact same time. It was a Tuesday evening, 6 days before the wedding. Claire had gone to take a shower, and her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter. It buzzed. I wasn't going to look. I really wasn't. But the screen lit up, and the preview of the message was right there in front of me before I could look away. It was from Marcus, and it said, "Last night was everything. I'm going to miss you so much. I wish things were different." I stood there for a long moment. I read it again, and then a third time. My hands were completely still. That surprised me. I expected shaking, but there was nothing. Just a cold, spreading numbness, like ice water slowly filling my chest. I picked up the phone. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. And I scrolled up through the messages. What I found was not a one-time mistake. It was months of conversations, months of plans, of sneaking around, of stolen time together. There were messages about how she felt trapped, messages from Marcus saying he felt guilty but couldn't stop. There were photos I will not describe. There was a message from Claire sent 3 weeks earlier that said, "I keep thinking about calling off the wedding, but I don't know how to hurt him like that." She didn't want to hurt me, so instead, she hurt me like this. I put the phone down. I heard the shower shut off. I heard her moving around in the bathroom, the familiar sounds of her routine that I had listened to 1,000 times. I walked to the living room and sat down on the couch. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she smiled at me. "Hey, you okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired. Long day." She nodded and went to get dressed. That was the moment I made my decision. I was not going to confront her. I was not going to call Marcus. I was not going to cancel the wedding, not in the way she expected. I was going to let everything move forward, exactly as planned. I was going to smile and help with the decorations and taste the cake and pick up my suit and stand at the altar. And then, in front of everyone we had ever loved, I was going to let the truth speak for itself. I know some people will hear that and think it was cruel. Maybe it was, but you have to understand, these 2 people had looked me in the eye every single day while lying to me. Marcus had sat across from me at dinner 2 weeks before and toasted to my happiness. Claire had let me hold her hand and talk about our future children. They had chosen over and over again not to tell me the truth. They had made a fool of me in private. I decided they could answer for it in public. That night, after Claire fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen with my laptop open and I started making a plan. The first thing I did was set up an automatic cloud backup on my own phone. Then, over the next 2 days, I found ways to get what I needed. I won't go into all the details, But I will tell you that Marcus, in his arrogance, had no idea how easy he had made it. He had sent messages from his own personal email account to Claire's. He had called her from his regular phone number, and Claire, for all her apparent concern about hurting me, had not deleted a single message. By Thursday, 4 days before the wedding, I had everything I needed. I had screenshots of their messages going back 6 months. I had call logs. I had photos they had sent each other. I had enough to fill a 10-minute presentation that no one in that room would ever be able to argue with or deny. I put it all together into a video. A simple, clear, devastating video. I saved it on my phone, on a USB drive, and I emailed it to a private address only I had access to. I was not going to risk losing it. And then I continued preparing for my wedding. Thursday afternoon, Claire and I went to the venue for a final walkthrough. She was excited, talking about the flower arrangements and the lighting. She grabbed my hand as we walked through the doors of the hall, and she squeezed it. I squeezed back. I smiled at her. Inside, I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything all at once, and it had compressed into something so dense that it had no feeling left at all. Marcus came over that evening for what he called a pre-wedding beer. He sat in my living room, my best man, the person who would be standing next to me at the altar, and he told me he was proud of me. He said I deserved to be happy. He looked me directly in the eye and said it. "You're going to be such a good husband, man." I raised my bottle. "Thanks, brother." Brother. The word landed in my chest like a stone. I watched him laugh at his own jokes, watched him check his phone and quickly put it face down on the table, because of course he did. And I thought about everything I had ever given this man. My trust, my time, my loyalty. 15 years of it, and I smiled, and I refilled his glass, and I said absolutely nothing. Friday was the rehearsal dinner. Both families were there. Claire's mother kept crying happy tears and hugging me. My own mother pulled me aside at one point and said, "She's a wonderful girl, Daniel. You chose well." I hugged her back. "I know, Mom." That night, lying in bed, we had been staying in the same apartment. I wasn't going to break that routine either. I stared at the ceiling and I thought about what it would feel like the next morning. I thought about the guests arriving, about the music starting, about walking down to the altar and waiting. I thought about Claire coming through those doors in her dress. I thought about Marcus standing next to me with his hand on my shoulder. And then I thought about pressing play. I barely slept. Not from grief, though, that was there, but from something harder to name, a kind of terrible clarity, the feeling of knowing exactly what is coming and waiting for it with your whole body. Saturday morning arrived. It was a beautiful day, genuinely beautiful. The sky was that deep, clear blue that only comes in early autumn, and the air was cool and clean. Under different circumstances, I would have thought the day was made for a wedding. In a way, I still do. I got dressed at my apartment with 2 of my other friends, guys who had no idea what was coming. They were excited and loud and kept teasing me about being nervous. I played along. I laughed at the right moments. I let them fix my tie. At the venue, the hall was full. 73 people. I know the exact number because I had approved the final guest list myself. 73 people who had come to witness the beginning of a marriage that would never happen. Family, friends, colleagues, Claire's relatives who had flown in from other cities. Marcus arrived in his suit looking confident. He clapped me on the back. "Ready?" he asked. "More than you know," I said. He laughed. He thought that was nerves talking. The ceremony began. The music played. The guests settled into their seats. The officiant stood at the front, a calm, older man named Robert who had done hundreds of weddings. He had a kind face and a steady voice, and he had no idea he was about to be at the center of something that was not a wedding at all. And then the doors opened, and Claire walked in. She was wearing a white dress that her mother had helped her choose. Her hair was up. She was holding flowers. She was smiling. She was looking right at me. And she was beautiful. Even then, in that moment, knowing everything I knew, I registered that she was beautiful. It almost made it harder. She walked toward me slowly, and I watched her come, and I kept my face perfectly calm. She reached me. She took my hand. Her hand was warm. "You look incredible," she whispered. So do you, I said. Robert began speaking. He talked about love and commitment and the sacred nature of what we were about to do. I heard every word. The room was warm and quiet and full of the kind of happy attention that only a wedding can create. And then came the moment. Robert paused before the formal vows and said, as he had told us he would during the rehearsal, "Before we continue, is there anything either of you would like to say to the other or to the people gathered here today?" This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was exactly why I had let it go this far. I turned to face the room. "Actually," I said, "there's something I'd like to share." Claire looked at me with a small, surprised smile. She thought I was going to make a romantic speech. I could see it on her face, that soft, expectant look. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my phone. I had already connected it to the venue's display screen when I arrived, while the guests were still gathering. I had done it quietly, in under 2 minutes, while the event coordinator's back was turned. The screen on the wall at the front of the hall, the one that had been displaying a slideshow of photos of Claire and me over the years, was now ready to show whatever I played. I pressed the button. The slideshow stopped. The first thing that appeared on the screen was a simple title I had made. It said, "A Few Things I Learned This Week." The room stirred. People shifted in their seats, confused, assuming it was some kind of wedding tribute or surprise. Then the messages began. I had arranged them cleanly, in chronological order, large enough to read clearly from anywhere in the hall. 6 months of conversations between my fiancée and my best friend, their own words in their own voices on the screen for 73 people to see. The first message appeared, then the second. By the third, the room had gone completely, absolutely silent. I did not look at Claire. I did not look at Marcus. I looked at the screen, along with everyone else. I heard a sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the middle of the room. I heard Claire's mother whisper something in a voice that was not quite recognizable as language. I heard nothing from Marcus. I heard nothing from Claire. When the video finished, the screen went dark. The silence lasted a long time. It felt like longer than it was. I put my phone back in my pocket. I straightened my jacket. I looked at Robert, who was standing very still, his expression the kind of careful blank that a professional wears when they have absolutely no script for what is happening. "I think we're done here," I said quietly. I turned to the room. 73 faces, all looking at me, some with shock, some with tears, some with a kind of stunned, helpless grief on my behalf. I looked at my mother. She was already crying, pressing her hand over her mouth. I gave her a small nod. She understood. I was okay. Or I would be. I did not make a speech. I did not yell. I did not say anything cruel. I did not need to. The evidence had said everything with perfect, quiet precision. I walked down the aisle. I heard someone start crying behind me. I heard a chair scrape back. I don't know whose. I heard a murmur begin to rise in the room as I reached the doors. I pushed them open and stepped out into that clean autumn air, and I kept walking. My friend James caught up with me in the parking lot. He was one of the groomsmen, one of the good ones. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just walked next to me. "Car?" he said eventually. "Car," I said. He drove. I sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window at the clear blue sky and the trees beginning to turn gold at the edges. We drove for a while without talking. "I'm sorry, man," James said finally. "Don't be," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not." That might sound impossible to believe. I understand that. But here's what I had come to understand in that long, sleepless week between finding that message and walking out of that ceremony. The grief was real. It was enormous. It would take time, more time than I wanted, to work its way through me. But underneath the grief, there was something else. Something I did not expect. There was relief. I'd almost married someone who did not love me the way I needed to be loved. I had almost bound my entire life to a woman who, in her own words, had been looking for a way out, but hadn't known how to hurt me. I had almost stood next to a man at my own altar who had been lying to my face for months. I almost didn't find out. If her phone hadn't been on the counter, if the message hadn't come at exactly that moment, if the screen hadn't lit up. I came that close to a different life. A life built on a broken foundation that I couldn't see. The week I had just lived through was the hardest of my life, but it had also been the most clarifying. Because I had made a decision under unbearable pressure, and I had carried it through with something I had not known I possessed. I had carried it through with dignity. Not anger, not revenge. Dignity. There is a difference, and I want to make sure you understand it. What I did was not about humiliating two people. It was about refusing to be silent when silence would have meant complicity in my own betrayal. It was about standing in front of the people I loved most and saying, "This is the truth. I deserve the truth. And so do all of you." In the weeks that followed, I heard from many of the people who had been in that hall. Some reached out to express support. Some were confused. Some, I think, were still processing something they had never seen before and didn't quite have a category for. Marcus tried to contact me 3 times. I didn't answer. There was nothing he could say. Not because I was too angry to hear it, but because I genuinely did not need it. His explanation, his apology, his guilt, none of it was something I required. I had already closed that door. Claire, I heard, went to stay with her parents for a while. Her mother, to her credit, sent me a handwritten note that arrived about 2 weeks later. It was short. It said she was sorry, that she was ashamed, that she hoped I would be okay. I wrote back and told her I already was, because by then I almost was. The apartment I had shared with Claire was in my name. I repainted the bedroom. I moved the furniture around. Small things, but they mattered. I went back to work. I started running again, something I had let slide during the engagement, too busy with planning and logistics and a life I was building toward a future that turned out not to exist. Running helped. There is something about moving through physical space, covering ground, one foot in front of the other, that gives the mind somewhere to go. I am not going to tell you I came out of this without scars. That would not be true, and it would not be honest, and honesty is the whole point of this story. I trusted 2 people completely, and they both chose themselves over that trust. That leaves a mark. It changes the way you look at things for a while. It changes the way you stand in a room with people who say they love you. But here's what else it did. It taught me what I was made of. I'd spent a week carrying something enormous, completely alone, and I had not cracked under it. I had not lashed out. I had not made it messy. I had been methodical and patient, and in the end, I had been clear. I had been the kind of person I wanted to be, even in the worst circumstances. That turned out to matter more to me than I expected. The last thing I want to say is this. If you are sitting somewhere right now, carrying something heavy that someone you trust put on you, a lie, a betrayal, a quiet breaking of something you thought was solid, I want you to know that the worst part is usually the waiting, the not knowing what to do, the moment when you first understand the shape of what has happened to you and you can't yet see the other side of it. The other side exists. I am living on it. And on that particular Saturday in autumn, when I pushed open those doors and walked out into that clear blue air, leaving behind the ceremony and the guests and the man who was supposed to be my best friend and the woman who was supposed to be my wife, I felt the ground firm under my feet. I had walked in as someone's fiancée. I walked out as myself. And that, in the end, was more than enough. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Francisko's Stories, new videos every week.